So I'm Stefano, really nice to meet all of you. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes explaining a bit what we do at Redstone and how we try to internationalize. It's one way. I would love to brainstorm with you in the probably 5 minutes we have for questions. There are other ways, and we can discuss that together. Maybe quickly, something about ourselves. We're a venture capital firm, a special one, based in Berlin, and we do two things. One is we manage multiple funds of our own, where we are the GPs. And second, we also manage corporate venture capital activities. And we do this around Europe. We have HQ again is in Berlin, presence in Switzerland, in Scandinavia, Paris, Korea, Japan. And what I'm going to tell you is a bit how we slowly, from this beautiful town here, we decided to go into other countries. The approach we have really is around three main questions. At least this is the three that I want to present to you now. One is about the strategy, whether it makes sense and how. The second one is about deal flow. If it makes sense, how can I gain the deal flow that I need? And the third one is who I do this with. Who do I do this with, right? What kind of people, what kind of setup, and then maybe later we can also go on fundraising. So first question, does it make sense? Again, think about our problem. We manage multiple venture capital funds with multiple corporates at the same time. So we really need to be fast in identifying an investment, a market opportunity to develop a thesis. What we did, we actually employ our own data science team. We collect information about deal flow, about stats coming from, fundraising to new companies being created to investor investing in certain part of the world, and we combine it all together to have what I call an evidence-first approach. So what we do here is essentially we'll build a story. We think that in country X, given some demographic and market trends, a certain technology, a certain type of business model is going to be adopted more. We try to have evidence about it by, signals such as fundraisings, exits, and if this is something qualified, then we actually have a story. We have a market thesis, and then we can go on and test it. Again, the way we do it is very quantitative. Other funds don't have full-time data scientists like we do, but they always have to employ some sort of analytical setup. So the first thing that I will do is really use the data. The data has to tell you whether it makes sense. Obviously, it's cool to invest in e-commerce in Berlin, but we should wonder whether there's actually a thing if you're coming from Asia, right? The second part is it's not enough to know that there is a really interesting company to invest in, a really interesting market to invest in. You need to get access to it. And that's something, especially at the beginning when we expand new geographies, that we undervalue, that we really underestimate. So what we do here is a dual strategy. First off, we want to find what we call the brokers. In every geography, whether it's a country in Asia, whether it's a country in Europe, there are specific investors who will clearly have a better access to certain kind of deals. And if those investors overlap with your investment thesis, you want to talk to them. How do we identify those investors? Again, we're pretty much data-driven. We collect information about transactions over time. This is something quite easily done, even if you just have a pro license with the Crunchbase, for example, right? And you want to understand who are the people that are investing the most successful in certain sectors. Why? Because you want to go and talk to them. And this is something, a preparatory work that we do always when we want to expand to new geographies. And on top of that, obviously, what you want to do is also build what we call reputational and social capital. By that I mean you need to bring a story, not just for yourself to move in the market, but also of your added value in investing there. I'll give you an example, which actually is the other way around. We build an LP community in Asia, mainly in Korea and Japan, to invest through one of our funds into European innovation, European industrial tech. What's the story behind that? What is the added value that we bring in there? Essentially, what we noticed over the last few years exploring Asia is that when it comes to this B2B science engineering-based innovation, they are suffering from a comparative lack of supply of that innovation from within compared to, say, China. Right? So that's super interesting into getting into Europe versus the US, because the US is just quite expensive and harder to access, if you ask me, right? So with this story, we clearly have an added value. We have a story we can bring to you social, we can bring reputational capital in a way to bridge, right? So you also need to build on top of a quantitative market analysis, also a really nice story that makes sense for you and makes sense for the parties you're working with. Lastly, what sort of team? I always, when I think about this, I always think about one of many of Jeff Bezos' principles for decision making, which is, a decision can be a one door, right? You just get in and you cannot go back, or two sort of exit door. What do I mean by that is that some decisions can be easily reversed. They are less risk averse than others. Some others are so expensive, you need so much capital that it's really hard to go back, right? So the way we try to expand, especially in very new markets, we always try to go for a two-way door sort of decision. I can give you some examples. The one in the middle, the joint venture that we have with people from some Angel Partners, you probably, I'm not sure they're here today, but they'll probably be around somewhere over the week. We have a joint venture with this local investor in Korea. This is a two-way door, both for us and for them, because what we're doing, we are establishing slowly, but steadily, on operations there. But at the same time, we're not expanding the team so much as to have some costs, right? This is something that we always do at the beginning to try and test whether, I can have an hypothesis, I can have a narrative about a new market. That doesn't mean it's true. I might be mistaken. I might have not the right data. So that's something that we always check. Let's start slowly, and if it makes sense, then we ramp up. And this is, for example, what happened in Zurich, Helsinki, and Stockholm, where you see over there. I mean, probably many will say, yeah, this is still Europe. However, I always am reminded that to access deals in Switzerland, you actually need to be there on the ground, for example, right? So again, what we did there, we've been there now for probably 4 years now. We started with a venture partner, someone that was, part-time employed with us. It was a clear win-win situation for both us and them. And as soon as the first results, the first pieces of evidence went in, we went on, founding a subsidiary there, where the local partner is the managing partner of Switzerland, essentially, and now operations are fully deployed over there. So again, what we always do is either start with a joint venture or with a venture partner. Again, I'm looking here at Paris and San Francisco. We have venture partners there. We have not fully employed teams because we're testing the grounds whether our hypothesis for our markets is how we think it is, right? And then generally, according to our experiences, after 1.5 years, you gather enough evidence, you have gathered enough momentum to make a decision of whether to keep going or not. I'll stop here. I think I flooded you with lots of information fast. More than happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for your insightful presentation. We read also in the newspaper and had our talks with SBI in Japan, and you did not mention that. Although of course that's interesting for us as well. Yesterday and before yesterday we had Sanbo here on the stage as well. So Tobias and Wu Chao. So we're in contact with them, and I'm very happy to know you better. And now Yoshi was here also yesterday. So yes. I think this is a very interesting triangle from our point of view.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Thank you for pointing that out. So I hinted at that without mentioning names exactly. So for example, our latest efforts has been, just a few months ago, we launched a fund jointly with SBI, so the Japanese bank. It's the first presence fully in Europe. They've been doing venture capital for more time than me and my colleagues. And there again, the narrative has been, Japan especially is suffering from lack of deep tech innovation. They used to be extremely competitive. This is no longer the case with the rise of China and a couple of other competitors around the world. And they have an appetite for exploring, right? And we built over the last 6 years quite a good ecosystem through corporates and especially know-how into B2B, deep science, engineering-based technology. And this fund is purely focused on that. And what we bring on top with that fund is really a connection for European tech to Asia, which I think is something quite game-changing if we make it happen.
Yeah. More questions? Maybe I would like to ask one. What I find very interesting is that you say, okay, we work very evidence-based. This is for us the most important thing.
Yeah.
Then my first reaction would be, okay, can it be, what could the other way be than evidence-based before you invest such huge sums? And I'm interested to learn a bit more about like the balance of using the evidence and the facts, and then also the people that in the end you invest in.
Yeah, absolutely. Disclaimer: I'm a data scientist. I did a PhD. I'm a nerd, and I use data to try to make my decisions sometimes, right? So one thing that I noticed when I joined the world of venture capital, generally speaking, pre-IPO finance, it's extremely relationship-based. We build our expectations. We build our theory or how our market should be, what my investment should be like by talking to other people, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong, I love talking to you. But at the same time, you have biases. I have biases. We are part of one bubble, and we're not seeing what's outside, right? So how I tackle that when I say evidence-based is I try to look at data that goes beyond my bubble. This is why when I make an investment thesis, I want to look not just at the founders that I know through my network or the network of my partners, but also just literally every company I can find and literally every market trends that I can connect with that and make an investment thesis. So this is what I mean. Obviously, everybody has to be some sort of quantitative and analytical. I think what we're doing a bit more is that we really put that at the center and try to complement my probably good but still biased decision making with a bit more data.
Okay. And then finally, of course, also how to pronounce your last name correctly.
Oh, no, you did it quite well, actually.
But please help me that I'm sure of it, because you said almost.
Yeah, no, because it's one of the most difficult Italian surnames ever. So it's called Gurciullo. It's super hard. Don't get it's fun.
Gurciullo?
Yeah, wow, well done.
Gurciullo.
You're better than Italians.
Okay, no, but yeah. Just,
wonderful.
Yes. Thank you so
I'll
much.
be around. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.